Preparing your live stream.
All right.
Oh, I got to go to YouTube. Oh, I got to go to Facebook. All right, there it is. Aha, live we are.
So, brothers and sisters,
Welcome all, welcome all. Come on into the sanctuary. This almost feels like walking into like a memorial service or something. We got to get some upbeat church music. Picturing a church mother with a big hat right now. It's okay, baby. It's okay. Two different things. Say something. Just say one thing. Jay Witt, are you there? Because I can't hear you. I hear your music, but I don't hear Jay Witt. Feeling it on the keys. Let me go to YouTube and see how we looking, how we living. Pragmatic Crystal is always in the house. Good morning, sister. Good evening. Brooklyn Lou, what's happening? Yeah, we're getting it together. We're giving some time for folks to come on in. Come on in and grab a seat. Sit with someone you didn't come with this morning. Shake a hand, hug a neck. One of those church hugs though, on the side, brothers and sisters. No full frontal hugs. Yeah.
Voodoo.
Jay Witt, what's happening? Jay Witt, I just heard you pop in. What's up? Say something else. I can't hear you.
Brady.
Yeah, I hear you now.
I'm proper.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they here?
Yeah. The chat is filling up. The room is filling up.
Oh, so I can begin to step out into my fivefold ministry. Is that what's going on here?
Well, the music was already playing as they were coming in, so they were already feeling the spirit. So,
Okay. We'll see if I can.
Miss Candy, what's going on?
All right. Well, as is my custom, I'm going to welcome you. Look at your brothers and sisters and welcome them. Just turn around and welcome them. We welcome our friends and we welcome our enemies.
Every day.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, to our
KJC, what's
enemies.
good?
Some of you hate to listen, but you can't turn it off. Some of you are using us like a lightning rod. You wouldn't dare say what we're saying, but you'll wait to see if sudden calamity befalls us. Come on, somebody. Yes, sir. As one of your own poets have said, you pray and pray on my downfall, but every time I hit the ground, I bounce up like round ball. All right? Yes, sir.
I believe that was Pastor Jay-Z.
Yeah, amen, amen. Elder, the Right Reverend Jay-Z. You may have thought exactly what we're saying, but you're scared. You're scared to voice it. You're scared that it'll bring greater condemnation. But somebody said Revelation 21:8 says, but the fearful. What he said? The fearful and the unbelieving. Ain't it good to be fearful, unfearful, and unbelieving?
Oh, we're going to talk about the fear tonight. I just posted this on Facebook. I had a very fearful experience. I might need you, Jay, to talk me down off this ledge. We'll get to that in a minute. So, but now welcome everybody who's coming in.
Yes, welcome. Tap your neighbor, say, I'm not afraid anymore. Tap your neighbor and say, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. Yes, sir. Tap your neighbor and say, I'm not afraid. Come on, somebody. But
you guys see the number on the screen. That number is for those who may want to call in. Last week we had a brother call in who had personally left faith, but had not left the faith community. And we're here to talk to anybody who's out there, not sure where you're at. If you're kind of in, but you're out, you know that your heart is out of the faith. So yeah, that number's on the screen. We'll take some calls later on. You'll need the number, and then you'll need the ID, the meeting ID. We're gonna ask you for the meeting ID. We got rid of the password. There's no password, just the meeting ID you need to call in. Now, let me go check one more thing. I'll be right back, and we'll get ready to get started.
Yes, sir. Look at your neighbors and say, it's good to be here. Say it's good to be here.
All right, let me check chat. How do I get there? Boom, chat. Okay. You ready to go?
We're about ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, you may have your seats if you can. You may have your seats.
Have a seat if you can.
Yes, sir.
What's happening, y'all? Welcome to our Tuesday nights show. This is Exit Strategy. We're looking back at the front door. We walked out of the front door of the church. Some of us escaped through the window. Some of us escaped, went out the back door. But now that we're out, we find ourselves looking back at the front door. And people keep asking us, why are you still concerned? Well, because we know that there are people who are still inside. They're inside looking at the front door. Some of them are looking for us to return. You're not going to see that with me. Some of them inside are looking at the front door because they too are like, man, I feel like I'm outside in my heart, but I'm still inside, on Sunday mornings. And we know that feeling. We know that feeling well. There's some people who they don't know where they want to be. Some days they wake up and they're in. They believe, they're strong. They believe God is helping their unbelief. Other days they wake up and their unbelief is fierce. And so we're here to take calls. We're here to talk to folks, kind of just help you see how we got to where we are, and allow you to share some things about where you are, and just kind of just see what logic, what rationality, what skepticism, what it looks like when the rubber meets the road. So that's why we're here. Jay Wick, you want to give a little welcome?
We welcome, as we said, we welcome our friends. We welcome our enemies. Some of you hate our guts. You would rather see us in hell than to see us continuing in this apostasy that you think is so deplorable. And I'd ask you to check yourself. Do you really believe in the hell that you are warning us about if you want to see us there? I'm gonna turn it back over to Elder Brady real quick as I have to make a quick run. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
But just think about that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today. I get a lot of people who tell me, you find Christians on all different sides of the fence. People who believe the Bible, there are all kind of beliefs you can have. So there's some who would amen that we don't really have a choice in the matter. God has chosen those who are going to be his, and God does the work to make them believe, to make them, he gives them faith. There are others who say, no, you've got a choice and God's going to respect your choice. I like to tell folks sometimes, like, so God's going to respect my choice. God's not going to force me to do anything. God's not going to force me to believe. But if I don't believe, he's going to force me to suffer in hell forever. Like, if I could, like, it doesn't make sense to tell me God's not going to force me to do anything, but then he's going to force me to suffer forever. If I could choose, like, I would prefer that he forced me to believe if there's such a thing as a hell. But if he's not going to force me to do the one thing, but he is going to force me to suffer forever, like, what? Why is he choosing which of those two forces he's going to employ? Why wouldn't a loving God, if he's going to force me to do anything, force me to believe? Anyway, there are things that we could talk about in terms of the fear that those who believe and who are tempted to not believe, who feel like this doesn't add up, doesn't make sense, but they keep believing, almost like musical chairs. You keep your hand on the chair because you fear if the music stops, you want to have a seat. You want to sit down somewhere. I used to use that analogy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, isn't it beautiful to have a plurality of elders? I step away for a moment and I know he's going to hold the fort down.
Hey, I used to use that analogy back when I was an evangelist about the musical chairs, and I would tell people, you don't really follow Jesus. You're just holding on to him so that if the music stops, you have a place to sit down. Well, I think that it's possible for the believer who's becoming an unbeliever to still be doing that musical chairs routine. You're dancing around trying to not end up without a seat. You don't really believe, but you, just in case, you've got your hand on that Jesus chair. So we're here to just talk about what kind of sense that actually makes. But Jay Witt, I wanted to ask you, have you ever listened to the rapper Immortal Technique?
I want to say my feelings about him might be what your feelings are about MF Doom.
Really?
Yeah, they might be.
So he's too technical for you to appreciate him.
Well, no.
Okay.
I'm using it looser. Okay. I'm referring more to the fact that you're not a particular big fan of you're not a fan at all of MF Doom.
No.
But this is a person who is he's reputed by some to be a man of some significant standing, and I know that is true of Immortal Technique. Yeah. I haven't listened to him at length. I believe I've listened to him because he was a person people told me was good and I should check out. But I couldn't tell you what I remember in terms of my impression.
I listened to him for the first time today. I was driving back from Montreal. I just got back, so you see me with the Montreal hat on. I just got back, but Spotify DJ'd my ride back, and Spotify was killing it, playing all kinds of like just banging hip hop. But it played an Immortal Technique song. I was about to like skip it. I said, now let me listen to dude, because I've heard all kinds of things about him. He kind of reminds me of Timothy Brindle a little bit, like the way he raps and his rhyme schemes. And I got a Timothy Brindle vibe, but it was a song, this song from Immortal Technique. I can't even say I'm a fan of it, but something about this song, it's one of the most creative and creepy songs I've ever heard, like at the end of this song, I felt something. I felt like like, yo, if I didn't know what I know about the Bible and how untrue it is, the song was almost enough to scare me to like, yo, there might be some like, but it wasn't about God at all. It was more about the devil. Like it was a I say this, I don't want people to think I mean more than I mean, because I don't mean what
Well,
I'm going to
you
say.
can be guaranteed they will do that, but go ahead, continue.
It was almost like, if you remember the movie, what was the movie with Denzel Washington um and the demon? Was it Fallen? Was that the one?
You, you when you
You're not a movie guy, I forgot.
No, I am a movie guy,
Okay,
but it's a very specific kind of movie, you know.
okay. In the
Um,
chat, y'all tell us, it was a movie with Denzel Washington, and there was a demon that was going from person to person. I think it was called Fallen was the name of the movie. But anyway,
mhm,
this song was almost like that. But he told this story about how wicked and how evil people could be.
mhm,
And he's telling this story about this young teen who ended up living and doing something very wicked and very evil. And by the end of the song, it gets like just straight, like you can't believe you're listening to it. It's so foul and so evil. But it's like a 6-minute song. The story is so
mhm,
intricate, you have to listen.
mhm,
And then the twist at the end of the song is like, yo. And then there's another twist. Like there's two twists at the end of the song. And one of the I won't tell the first twist in case the person who's listening goes to listen to the song. I want you to still have a treat. So I won't tell you the first twist, but then the second twist is the rapper Immortal Technique reveals. I don't know if this is art or if this is real, because he says this is not just a song, this is a true story. And then he
mhm,
says, I know because I was one of those people on that rooftop where this thing happened at.
mhm,
And
mhm,
it's like, yo, wait a minute. This can't be real, because if this is real, you need to be in jail. Like, don't be
mhm,
making a song talking about I was there.
mhm,
But if it is real, and he's talking about just how evil and how wicked people can be, yo,
mhm,
it was one of the most like, how you see people and you think if anybody's going to hell, that person's going to hell. Even
mhm,
me, right? My nephew
mhm,
got my nephew got a payday loan. And if y'all know anything about payday loans, if you're home during the day, you're out of work, you see these TV commercials to just bring in your paycheck, show that you have a job, and you can get a payday loan. My nephew was in a situation where he needed money desperately. He just got a payday loan.
mhm,
Payday loans, the interest on a payday loan is 600%.
mhm,
You borrow $500, you have to pay back $3,000.
mhm,
I said, I don't believe in hell, but I'll believe in a hell just to put the payday loan people there. Like that's how wicked that system is to me. Well, in the same way, this Immortal Technique song, it just left me saying, like, damn, I don't believe in hell, but there almost needs to be one. For the way he
mhm,
told this story and the people involved, I'm like, yo, if I didn't know better, it was the kind of thing that would make me like run back to believing something, because we can't live in
mhm,
a world where that kind of stuff can happen. So
mhm.
anyway, I just say that to say, I need you to talk me down off the ledge, because Immortal Technique almost made me run back to something spiritual today. That's
No,
how creeped out I
well,
was.
I think it's interesting that um, hell as a concept comes later, clearly, because it seems even if you look even at the text, the idea is, well, you're either going to get it or you're, what does he say in Exodus 20, to the third and the fourth generation? Either you're going to get it or your kid's going to get it.
Mm,
So your kid comes out and your kid's missing and, is maimed in some way. And you're like, okay, you got it. You're right. They
mm,
got it because of you.
mm,
And then I guess you can see how with a system like that, because you look at the conditionality of the commands, and I guess you could say the Deuteronomic code,
mm,
and you can see that as time goes on and people see, oh, well, it doesn't quite shake out that way. Sometimes you have multiple generations of really successful, horrible people, you can see that it was only a matter of time before they would evolve a system where retribution is going. God gonna get his. God gonna get his.
And you're going to get yours.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So you can see how, and I can see how you get the feeling. We had a conversation about this a couple of days ago, and I think this is something that you referred to today. You have forgotten, but part of the conversation we were talking about was the lack of utility for heaven for people when they get to a certain amount of financial wealth. Well, you can see how I think hell is definitely the invention of a man who wasn't in power. You know what I mean? Where it's like the guy who isn't in power, your day is coming. Like, now whereas the man who's in power, because of him or her, because of their power, they can ensure that you get your just comeuppance in the here and now. But the person who's oppressed, he said he was coming to the lowly. He was going to come to the, these ideas come to the lowly. They come to the downtrodden. They come to the oppressed, because that person, they can only count on a supernatural deity to settle the score in the hereafter. And I think, but even when they do think that scheme out, they fail to really think. A lot of times they don't really think too far. They'll have some sort of vague sense of you're going to get yours. But when you really think about it, like even when you were just recounting what you were listening to in the song, and you're like, this person, if you almost wish there was a hell. When I actually contemplate the idea of eternal conscious torment, I unfortunately have to say, even some of the worst people I can imagine, I couldn't, I wouldn't wish it on them. That's why when I see comments in the comment section, the person is like, the person is like, Jesus is real and you're going to meet with, for one, when you never have to make such threats for real people, right? Especially an omnipotent real person. I would never have to feel like I need this. Clearly this person is mute, so I need to speak up for them and let you know, oh, you're gonna meet them, all right. And almost like, and I'm glad that you're going to meet them in judgment, right? That's the notion.
I wonder. We got subjects to get to, but you just made me think about something. Part of my deconversion. I'm trying to think of what the Christian's response would be to this. And for those who are watching, we do this often. We have these thoughts and then we think, but what would the Christian me have said to this? Or what will Christians say to this? But one of the thoughts along my deconversion was when I was thinking about, and this can't be true. One of the things that made me say this can't be true was I just had to think about, like, wait, as fallible and just, thinking in the Christian terms, sinful as I am, like, God left his message up to me to deliver. Like, I know what I get into. And God left his message up to me to deliver to other people. Like, at some point, like, as a Christian, that was almost like man, God was so gracious that he would use little old me. Upon deconverting, it was like, wait, that should have been a dead giveaway. Like, God's going to use me to spread this message. And so the same thing you're saying about hell, like, God needs me to tell people, to warn people about this hell. God needs me to tell people about this salvation. Like, me of all people. Like, I've been grafted into the con. And it sort of showed up the falseness of it at some point.
Yeah. And the best place to tuck away promises that won't be fulfilled is in the afterlife. If you really think about it, it's like where are you going to hide stuff from? Whenever you're hiding, I have a kid and when I gotta hide the Christmas gifts, you find a place to hide it where you know he can't reach, right?
Yeah.
If I got a whole scheme I'm selling you,
Hmm.
and people are they're gonna get hip to what we're saying.
Hmm.
How can I guarantee that they follow this thing through and that I'm left forever? Well, okay, I'll put it beyond,
Yeah, out
I'll
of their
just put it
reach.
beyond death, out
Yeah.
of reach.
Yeah.
And then occasionally, somebody will say, well, this person died and they came back and they brought something from the other side. But I mean, how much does that really count for? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's like if you can just put it past death, it's like, well, how will you find out what's true? You're going to find out when you die. Well, that's tantamount to saying I'm
Yeah.
never going to be able
Right.
to remark on whether I found out.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
It's the perfect scheme. It's the perfect scheme.
Yeah,
It can
yeah,
never be falsified,
no,
not on this
no,
side of, this side
no.
of death.
Yeah,
Um,
and I feel, and I'm afraid. I think far more preachers than we are willing to admit.
mm.
Come on, somebody. Come on, touch your neighbor and say, there's a whole lot of corruption going on. I think there's far more preachers.
Mm.
Now, I mean, I know I joke around a lot, but I really believe this.
Mm.
I believe, based on the fact that I was so immersed in the text, next thing you know, I came to realize, this stuff isn't lining up.
Mm.
Now, of course, there's some people who, I guess, for whatever reason, they're sincere and it never occurs to them. But I'm willing to guess or bet that there's probably far more people than you want to know that
Mm.
actually know there's not a whole lot to what they're selling to people. But who it's good for business?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
They'll never be able to check, right? And I don't want to throw us too far off of the topic.
Yeah.
So back in the hands of Elder Brady.
Well, yeah. So we're going to look at a video. Somebody sent me this video on Facebook in my messages, and I wasn't sure because they didn't tell me what it was, so they just wanted me to check it out. And I don't know why I listened because it's not the kind of thing that I've listened to. It's a woman doing a spoken word piece, and she basically is writing a letter. I'm gonna ruin it for you guys. So spoiler alert. I'm gonna spoil the whole thing so that we can talk about it. But she starts off reading this letter that she wrote to God. Basically, she's breaking up with God. You may have seen it going around Facebook. I don't know how old it is, but she's writing this letter, basically a Dear John letter, Dear John 3:16. She's writing this Dear John letter to God, explaining why she's breaking up with God. And I was waiting for reasons that resonated with me to come up, and none of the reasons ever resonated with me. Though I could see in the crowd there were people like, "What? Like, oh my, she's spitting now," and it almost felt like it must be a Christian crowd that had to know either this person is deconverting in front of us or she's up to something. And as it would turn out, she was up to something. So the first half of the poem is her telling God why she's through.
Mhm.
And then it takes a turn. The second half of the poem is God responding to her. And I could only watch about 20 or 30 seconds of the response. It's a long video. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We're going to skip around through her part of the letter. And I'm going to pause it and ask Jay Witt to kind of just respond to some of her reasons. Then we're going to go ahead to God's part of the letter. When I initially watched it, I couldn't get through it. It was nauseating to me. The things that she had God saying back to her. And those things were meant to like make the crowd, and the crowd even was with it. Like it was meant to make the crowd say, "Oh, there you go, God's firing back. God's clapping back at her now." And the clapbacks to me were nauseating. So we're gonna hear her. We'll skip around through hers, and then we'll go to God's response. All right, give me a second here.
I guess you're going to need me to let you know if I see it after you share it, or you got it.
Yep, let me know if she comes up on the screen.
The screen is sharing. I'm not hearing anything just yet. Okay, I see her.
Haven't played it yet.
I see her.
Play it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me make sure I'm sharing sound because Don't know if that happened like I needed it to.
I can see her, but I
Right.
can't. Yeah. You haven't started playing yet, so.
Okay, here she goes. We're going to skip around through this, but I'll start it from the beginning. Let me know if you don't hear it.
Dear God,
I can hear.
this is just to let you know that I'm breaking up with you. And I want you to know that this decision was not an easy one to make, but I feel it's what's best for the both of us, for me. And no, it's not me, it's you. They say the truth shall set you free, so I'm freeing myself from all your lies. And since you're always talking about how just you are, I think it's only just that you just answer me this. Where were you? All those years when my sister was crying mercy at the hands of her husband, when she couldn't spell love without fear, passion without pain. They say God is good, he's faithful. Where was this faithful God when my sister, who was faithful to her vows, faithfully got on her wounded knees day in, day out? Our Father who art in heaven, you are in heaven with your angels watching us over some popcorn, because for you, some of us are just a good movie with a pinch of salt. You betrayed me. You betrayed our trust. I now realize the foolishness in trusting something you can't see, because you never really know when it's going to sneak up on you and take away the people you love the most. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. What kind of king claims to love his kingdom, kisses his kids with his invaluable breath and turns his back on them, allowing evil to still kill and destroy? Makes sense to me why Judas betrayed you with a kiss. That's how backstabbing works in the kingdom.
So already you can see the crowd is like trying to like give her what she needs emotionally to let it all out, but also shocked because you're breaking up with God. I think this is a Christian event.
Yeah, they're kind of in on it already,
Yeah.
because they know that if you're at a Christian event, it's not going to end there. This is
Right.
going somewhere.
The turn is
You know,
coming.
it's yeah,
Yeah.
clear. And the reactions are almost like, I don't know, Jerry Springer or whatever, with the reaction card saying, "All right, at this point, you're supposed to sound shocked."
So nothing she said so far made me say, I can see why you're leaving, but I've been known to be very, I don't want to say dispassionate, but
Mhm.
I've never thought, and this is just me, in the chat you guys can maybe comment, I've never thought the problem of evil
Mhm.
was big enough to deconvert over, because
Mhm.
I was always so quick to just say, oh, well, we fell into sin. It's a sinful world. You're going to get these kinds of things. You're going to get women being abused by their husbands, and you're going to get, that's the fallen world. We did this to ourselves. And did God
Mhm.
allow it? If he did, it's because he's got a plan. Those kind of things always kept me from amening these kinds of, as a Christian, they kept me from amening these kinds of complaints. And even as a former Christian, I still am a little bit like, okay. If it's
As a
not a,
former Christian, your theodicy/theology is solid enough to make you this stuff. You have a certain amount of impunity to these kinds of arguments.
yes, and my real issue is, if it's not a theological problem that you're having with God, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably not ready to deconvert. If your issue is more emotional, or you just don't understand how a good God could let certain things happen,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but I mean, what do you think? Like, I'd say that's not theological enough. Is there room to be able to say no? Like, the Bible's theology doesn't add up for a good God to let these kinds of things happen. Like, I wouldn't hear this as a breakup with God letter, because for me, I'd be like, well, you'll be back. You're breaking up with him now, but something will happen and you'll be back, because if bad times can make you leave God, good times can bring you back.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, we have, I think it was it Genesis 51 or something like that, where he's like, you meant it for evil. but God meant it for good. So, I mean, the Bible is chock full of very these. I said 51, but I think it would have been 41 or 40, somewhere around there, 41. But it's chock full of things like that, where he sets it up to let you. I mean, even the cross itself, is supposed to be a sign that things didn't go the way you would have hoped, but at the end, God takes it and he turns it around for good.
It's like a T-shirt or a Christian slogan that the cross comes before the crown, right? There's going to be suffering, but only those who suffer with him are going to reign with him. So I'm like, when I hear these stories, I get it, kind of. But if your issues are not theological, I'm like, I think you'll be back. You'll be back to something, or maybe you won't go God, but you'll go something along the spiritual continuum, ancestors or the universe, or something supernatural is going to still float your boat until your skepticism kicks in, and you see the fallacy of. She even said she realized how foolish it was to believe in something she can't see. So that made me think, okay, you're starting to get it. But the very fact that you're talking to God is proof that you're not really done with God. I think the theists have a point when they say that. How are you angry at someone who doesn't exist?
Yeah, and there's an inherent in the complaint that things are not fair is the assumption that the world should be ordered in a different way.
Yeah.
And so that complaint, if that's what drives you out, it'll actually probably drive you back, because you have you look at things in such a way where you feel like there's a right way for things to be ordered. And believe it or not, that we speak of, the raw skepticism says there's a sense in which the indifference we have to insecticides and all kinds of other pesticides,
or the animals that we would rather not kill versus the animals that we do kill and eat.
I just watched a video on TikTok of a bear just decimating a cow. And then it was a stitch. I don't know. It's almost like it's like that. The only thing where there's no holds barred on TikTok, it seems, are like animal killing videos. And it was another video where the bear, because the bear, unlike big cats, he eats the thing while it's alive. He just it's basically torture. So I'm looking at this boar, because it was the same video. The first video, you saw a cow that seemingly was maybe slightly alive, where the entire entrails were just it had just ripped its entire, because bear's claws are very powerful. And it just had ripped the whole entire stomach. You could just see all the organs just and the cow was just there. It was just really awful. And then there was another video that was stitched with it of a bear basically grabbing a boar by the neck and it was crazy. Now, this is another part of the conversation we had before, because, for the bear, say for instance, the bear is going to bring that and feed its young cubs. Well, that's the way that nature, that's the way the bear has its claws specifically to do that. Now it's bad news for the boar. It's bad news for the cow. But it's like, that's what the bear does, but basically, this is a bit circuitous. The point is, in a world where those things happen, you have to wonder, where's your entitlement? Where's your assumption that, your loved one shouldn't die or whatever? Look at that boar. It had a mother.
Right.
It probably had brothers and sisters, not brothers and sisters, but siblings is what I would say, and look at the kind of fate it came to. And I always think of that when you look at animals of prey. You'll see they'll take the young from another animal and then feed their young with the young from another. And it's like, that's just the way the world is. It's a certain amount of indifference. Anyway, I could go on about this.
So basically, what you're getting at is you're getting to an ethic of humanism. The things that we think are right versus the things that we think are wrong, or the things that appeal to us as a species.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
reason why we have this sense of what we would like versus what we wouldn't like, and why what we like versus what we wouldn't like is so catered to things that please us, things that serve us. It's
Yeah.
humanism.
It's literally, and there's a certain myopia to it. It's endemic to being a human being, and not just being a human, because like that bear is myopic.
Yeah,
It's thinking about it and its cubs,
right.
itself and its cubs. Almost every species thinks this way. In fact, this is an unavoidable part of our existence. In order to, they always say this thing died so I could live, right? Like whether it's some sort of plant that you're making food out of, it was alive, but you had to kill it. You had to cut it down so that you can make your bread or whatever you're making out of it.
Right.
And there's a certain amount of focus on, well, my life is going to be sustained at the expense of this thing's life. And that's what's going on with the bear. And the bear is just indifferent to the suffering of the animal while it's eating it. Right. And if you you live in a world where that's happening literally every day, I mean, how do you think bears stay alive? I mean, well, yeah, every day on the planet, somewhere on this planet, not every bear eats every day, but on the planet, at any given moment, there's probably some animal. No, there isn't probably. There is an animal, like totally, almost basically torturing, like something worse than medieval torture going on in order for it to stay alive. And if you live in a world where that's permissible, the question isn't a question upward to God. The question is, why do you think that it should be any different for you?
Right. Well, because you have a Bible that tells you that man is made in the image of God. So we get special treatment. And basically, what we like to do on this podcast, on our regular podcast, is we talk about all the signs that you see in the Bible. Like there's a human fingerprint there. Of course, man would write something that makes us special from all the other creatures. So we get to do to them what they shouldn't have a right to do to us. Like it's us tailor making why we can. It's basically the Bible is humanist. Like the Bible is humanistic more than we were willing to admit. We're using God to make it okay for humans to do what we don't want other creatures to be able to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Miss Candy commented, she said the vid ? Exclamation. I guess she's like, we got so far away from you're absolutely right.
So the bottom line to what we just got off of was even her demand that it be a certain way is her still thinking in a sense of a God ordered it to be a certain way. So she can only be angry because she's still accepting this idea of, well, if God is God, then it shouldn't be this way. So she's not really giving up God. She's just complaining that God's not doing what she thinks God should do at this moment. And sometimes non-believers, we get charged with that too. When we talk about the problem of evil, Christians or theists will ask us, well, why do you think it should be any kind of way? Why are you mad at God for, or why are you mad at that things aren't more fair, aren't more just? And sometimes that's one of the reasons why I don't like using the problem of evil, because I don't think that things should be more a certain way. I'm willing to admit, no, I just like it if they were. As a human, I'd like it if things were more humanistic. That's just, I think we all would, right? As human beings, as opposed to saying, no, there's this overarching justice in the universe, or this overarching good, or this overarching purpose. I think atheists or skeptics, non-theists, need to be able to live with that, as opposed to leaning on the theistic, oh, it's supposed to be right, it's supposed to be good, it's supposed to be this, that, or the third.
There is also no particular reason, and Miss Candy, please be patient here. I'm going to end this really fast, but there's no particular reason to feel, based on what we can observe, that things should be otherwise for human beings. I mean, when you see the amount of space that has to be dedicated to hospitals, and the amount of suffering just in general on this planet is amazing. Like it's like, if you actually had to take in, I've been to countries and seen poverty that I didn't even know existed on the planet. And when you see that kind of suffering or poverty, you start to realize that, just based on what you can observe, there's just no reason to think that there's some special exception being made for human beings.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
all right,
yeah,
let's go back. We're going to just listen to one or two more of hers, and then we're going to jump to her
conclusion.
God. Well, not the conclusion, the response, the clapback from God. But let's hear a little bit more of her.
Don't try to talk me out of this. I've already made up my mind. It's not your will that will be done. It's mine. Give us this day our daily bread. Ask the kid on the street corner what that prayer means to him. He'll probably tell you a little bit about breadcrumbs and a whole lot of hopelessness, because for him, daily bread doesn't come every day. You talk about the blood of Jesus and the body of Christ, how it was freely given so we could freely receive life in its most abundant form. Yet innocent kids are still dying of malnutrition. That's because their breakfast time is at dinner time, and that's the only time their throats see anything else besides poverty. You still have the audacity to tell me, ask and it shall be given. You're a liar.
Now, does that strike some red meat there? Because now she is getting into the, God, here's what you supposedly said. I'm doing that. I asked and it wasn't given. Is that a little more theological than just her, or is that still just, you're just mad that God didn't do what you think he should do? Does God have any?
Well, that's one of those cap verses too, with like with the like escape hatch attached to it. Like, you didn't ask in faith, brother. Brother, if you would have only asked in faith, you would have received. But you did. When you ask, you got to make sure what it is, the book of James, that you shouldn't be asking in such a way where you're doubting.
Yeah. All right, so let's a little bit more, and we'll jump to the response.
You once told me that forgiveness of trespasses strengthens relationships, but I feel like you're still punishing me for Eve's transgressions. For how long will the seeds planted in my womb bear no fruit? How do you think it makes me feel to be called a woman, just not woman enough to be called mother? And don't tell me to come to you as I am. You're still the father of all, and I, the mother of none. Lead us not into temptation. I struggle to pray with my eyes closed. All I see when my eyes are closed is their eyes, because I've often wondered if fairy godmothers exist, and if they do, then how miserable do you have to be for them to hear your cry? How loud did I have to scream to silence my sister's pain? How many tears did I have to cry to quench my brother's thirst? Lord, how do you choose your soldiers?
All right, well, she's about to get to the response now, so I'm going to let it play.
I want to ask you to deliver us from evil, because you created it, so you can have it all, the kingdom, the power, the glory.
Hey, Brady.
Yeah.
Be still.
This audience is a little too easily entertained. That's all.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, I just don't find any of this impressive. I don't even think, even as a Christian, because it seems that it's heading toward. It's histrionic and melodramatic.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. That's fine.
No, I think that's worth pointing out. Like, are these straw man arguments? Now, granted, for somebody, these are real complaints. A woman who can't have a child who doesn't get food, a woman who's being abused and doesn't get answers. These are real complaints for some people. But to the maybe the more, that's why I keep going back to theology, to the more theologically robust, these can kind of be straw man arguments, because it's like, well, the Bible's got an answer for that. The book of Job, if you are willing to take it, could be an answer to the things that she's bringing up, which is going to get to, this is sort of like when I mentioned this to you earlier, you said, oh, so it's sort of like a modern day book of Job, because even though she's talking about all this suffering, God's going to have a response that's supposed to stop her mouth. So let's just get to that part now. Because as I watched this for the first time, I didn't know the God part was coming. I thought this just was going to be her letting off, and that was it. But we're going to get to God's clapback.
Be still and know that I am God. I can't say I'm surprised. In fact, I saw this coming.
This is God
I've seen the
speaking
way
here.
you don't even look at me the same anymore, the way you cancel our dates. Somewhere in between your busy life and worship of self, I've become a once a week thing, twice on Sundays thing, thrice in front of people thing, 4 times when you really need something thing. I've seen it in your eyes. I've seen your mind drift off when you're supposedly spending time with me. In fact, till today, I don't remember when last we spoke for longer than 1 minute and 20 seconds. What a bittersweet tragedy that the one time you're giving me quality time is to tell me we're out of time. And no, it's not me, it's you. You get on your knees and ask for my will to be done, yet you won't let me take the will. There's no room.
So this is where I cut it off. You see how much is left, right?
Yeah.
I cut it off at this point because I got nauseous. The very thought of somebody trying to justify not just God, but Bible God.
Yeah.
Like that, I almost threw up in my mouth. Like, what are you, like, are you for real?
I always have a problem with the phrase "Let me Jesus take the will" or "Let me take the will." It's like, what in the world does that even mean? I mean, like, who's actually God here? Like, who's God? Like, because if you got to let me, if I got to let him take the will, then who's actually in charge? You know,
Right.
like,
You're in charge of letting him be in charge.
yeah, it's like, come on, man. Like you got to hit me with something more robust than
Right.
that, like take the wheel. You wouldn't even let me take the wheel. It's like I thought you were in charge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought you were running the show.
Well, I was curious, like, and maybe she's going to say more to undo what she made me feel already. But in the beginning of her response, I'm like, you don't see how vindictive you're making your God sound. Like, I only get a minute and 20 seconds prayer from you anyway. So fine, go on and leave. You don't talk to me anyway. Like, who would serve such a
Again, I have to always bring up the pet analogy. If the chasm between us and God is infinitely greater than the chasm between us and a dog or a cat that we own, it doesn't even make sense. This rationale doesn't make sense. Like, would you look at your dog and be like, like, you don't even show me any thanks when I fill up your It's like, you know that the dog is utterly dependent on you to survive. And it doesn't matter. You have the dog around because you love the dog. It doesn't matter how thankful the dog is for what you're giving the dog. You have the dog there. You understand that the dog's capacity mentally is significantly lesser than your own. And yes, it's more eager to eat its food than it is to greet you when you put the food out. Right. But you're not going to hold it against the dog because the dog is a simple-minded being. Now, if you're telling me that the distance between humans and God is infinitely greater, the chasm is greater infinitely than that, then why in the world would it bother him that why in the world would he even be bothered that the human being doesn't believe in him? It doesn't even make sense.
And add to this, your dog, like, dogs typically don't bite the hands that feed them. You know why?
Absolutely.
Because they see the hand feeding it. They know that this food in my bowl came from your hand. Not going to bite that hand. So to even put that on the same par with a God who's never shown himself and only shown himself in books or on stages at churches where the music is playing just right, to equate that to a situation where you see your pets see you. You don't see God. You got to take for granted. By faith, we believe that the heavens were ordered by God. By faith,
you know their answer.
Believe that he is. Yeah.
You know the answer. Psalm 19 or whatever. They'll tell you all day. The heavens is like, yeah, you see him again, the ghost dad thing. So long as he's wearing something else that's real. Like that's when you see him.
Right.
Like you see him in the sky. You feel him here. You feel him there. You see him there. But it's like he's sort of like everything. So that's why I said it's kind of like it's like an ontological pantheism.
Yeah.
Where everything that is can be used as a vehicle of his self-revelation. But it's like
for those who don't get that, we did an episode on presuppositionalism, and it was kind of deep. I don't know if people got a chance to go through it, but in the episode we compared God. We talked about the Ghost Dad movie with Bill Cosby. Whenever somebody goes, quote unquote, invisible, they drink a potion or some kind of experiment, they turn invisible. The only way you could see them is when you put something visible on them. So you would be a hat and no face and a shirt in the form of a body. You got to put visible things on the invisible to make it visible. Well, we compare that
Exactly.
to the God of the Bible. The God of the
Mm-hmm.
Bible is invisible. Paul even says his invisible qualities. Well, how are you going to see him? Well, you drape him in things that are visible, such as the creation. And you keep putting, somebody gives you $5 when you needed money. You put all these visible things on this invisible God, and now he's draped in real things, but you still don't know if he's real because you can't really see him. So yeah, that's what David was referring to.
And let's just even simplify it more. If I was to say Brady is all of these things, anything that you could see, I would attribute that as being some manifestation of Brady. That's another way of saying Brady is nothing. Because if you're everything, you're nothing.
Right.
Like you're
everything. It's either I'm nothing or everything is me. So there really
is. That's why.
Right.
Thus the term pantheism.
Yeah.
That's the term pantheism, because it's like, if I'm literally everything, then that's tantamount to saying that I'm not a thing in and of myself.
Right.
Like ontologically, it's to say that everything else. It's like, that's when some people try to, they'll do some vague kind of quasi spirit. They don't want to be confined by religion, right? And then they'll just be like, the higher power, or some just kind of It's another way. It's like, well, why not? Or be like, God is just energy or whatever.
Right.
And it's just like, whatever that means, like, that's sufficiently vague to mean nothing. You get what I'm saying? So
you end up deifying everything, because the one thing that you're calling a deity is not really there. So you have to deify everything else. We talked about this too, to pad God's numbers, right? To make God look that much more real. You put the things that are real, you tag those things on your God.
Yep.
So,
and you just say he's the one that's responsible for these things. It's like, Paul says in Acts 17, in him we live, we move, and we have our being. Well, that's sufficiently vague enough to mean it, whatever you want it to
mean. So let's go back in. So like I said, this already, it's nauseating that she's painting. And I said this on Exit Strategy a few weeks ago. One of the things that I really believe in my heart is that non-theists have too high a view of God to accept the God of the Bible, because the God that she's talking about here, to me, is not a God who's worthy of worship. A God who would care about these kind of things is not a God who's worthy of worship. Yet this is the kind of God you get out of a Bible. So here she goes again. Well, this is God as she sees him.
There's no room for both you and me at the altar of your heart. There's no room for me to bless that womb when you're heavily pregnant with impatience. There's no room for me.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I would love to have some woman in the chat respond to that line. She hears or envisions God saying to a barren woman, there's no room for me as God to bless your womb because you're so pregnant with impatience. Bro.
Brady, I can't believe you're subjecting us to this. This is absurd.
Well, I have to, because there are people who they're held in the prison of belief because they hear God saying all these kinds of things to them. They won't leave because they think one of the lines that both her side of the poem and God's side of the poem use is, it's not me, it's you. There are people who are trapped in church who hear God saying to them, it's not God, it's me. It's not God, it's you. The believer who's tempted to not believe, there's something wrong with you. So even though what she's saying may be beneath what we're trying to deal with, I think she's speaking for people who are being held in religious faith by these kinds of ideas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really bad. I mean, the idea that she's on a stage, it looks like she's about to do a stand-up routine, and she's doing this nonsense, and people are like, the audience is being swayed. I'm like, you don't have a very critical audience here. It's like,
well, the audience isn't even being swayed. You know what they're being? The audience is relieved that she has God clapping back to the.
That's what I mean by swayed, though.
Yeah,
they find this entertaining,
right?
if I was sitting there, I'd be like, this is just really low. This is not very good entertainment. I mean, even for I don't know. This is like, I don't know,
if
Medea
you
or
were a
whatever.
Christian at that time, wanting God to clap back to the person who fought, what did God say to Job in the book of Job, right? Stand up and gird your loins, like gird yourself like a man. I'm going to question you. Like, there are people who their faith stands up. Like, yes, God's clapping back right now. You're saying this wouldn't have got an
Yeah.
amen from you.
Well, I'm just saying, even as a Christian, I would have first of all been saying like it's kind of sacrilegious and it's a little odd for you to be assuming that you could speak for God to your questions, like to put your words in his mouth. In other words, this is her brain functioning. This isn't God saying these things. These as a Christian, I would have said that's not God talking. That's her putting her words in God's mouth.
Well, I'm sure she could go to some verse for everything she's going to say. She can go to some verse. She can talk about where Saul was impatient and sacrificed. She
Okay.
could talk. There are all kind of verses that will give her
Well, I'm just
license to
I'm
say
when
God probably feels this way.
when she literally says you're too pregnant with X, Y, and Z to actually be pregnant, that's her talking. That's just it is just stupid. I mean, I know you say I like using the word stupid, but there you go. I used it for the first time today. It's stupid, and I wish I had my sound effects.
There's a cross movement song. So Ambassador has a song called Whirlwind, when it's on in the whirlwind, which is basically his version of God answering Job. And even before Ambassador did that, me and the group that I was a part of before Cross Movement back in the day, we had a song called View from the Throne, where we each took a turn. One of us was rapping as the Father, one of us was rapping as the Son, one of us was rapping as the Holy Spirit, basically answering humanity's questions. So I'm just saying that to say she's not alone in taking license to look at the Bible and say, God probably feels this about this human emotion. When humans express this complaint, God probably says this because he said it to this person here, said it to this person there. So I feel you, but I give her a little bit of creative license to talk back for the God that she believes in based on what she's read in the scripture.
I just remember having this exact conversation with Christians in the particular. I mean, we weren't OPC reformed, but we were pretty reformed, and it was just like we always were very cautious putting words in God's mouth. That I mean, the idea was that His word was His revealed. In other words, this is, and I keep saying in other words, but basically what I'm saying is there's a prohibition in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5 it's a prohibition against idolatry. And so the fear would be that you're making a graven image with your words. And that was the nature of the conversation. But yeah, that's it. That's it.
Making a graven image with your words. That's some heavy stuff.
Well, I mean, what they would say is that the prohibition, he said, you should not make for yourself any graven image of things in heaven or things on earth or things that are on earth. Like, and he goes on, right? You should not bow down and worship before I, Lord your God, am a jealous God, visit iniquities of fathers, et cetera, right? That is seen as a categorical prohibition. In other words, it prohibits literally making a statue and engraving a graven image, but it also prohibits the activity that leads to that, which is anything. It's okay. Easier way to put it is they would say when Christ elaborates, I think it's in Matthew 5 on you should not commit adultery, and he says, I say to you that anyone who lusts after a woman have committed adultery with her already in his heart, right? When he says that, he's saying that the rule that you are not to commit adultery isn't just literally committing adultery. It has to do with that whole category of sin. And so that's why they would say a graven image is not that the prohibition of graven images is not merely a prohibition of making an actual image with stone or with some sort of iron working or whatever. It's also prohibiting any sort of misrepresentation of God.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
For the person who said I don't see the number, it's on Jay Witt's profile, but it's too small to see right now. When I make me and Jay Witt larger again, you'll see the number. So let me play a little bit more of this, and then we'll come out of this. Oh, how about we put it in the chat? How about that? Do you have it, Jay Witt? Can you put the number in the chat? Are you in the chat right now?
I could, yeah, I could put it in the chat. Let me see.
That won't cause an issue with your screen name or anything?
I don't believe it will. I just got to make sure I have the right number. So I have it here. Just a second. For those who have a pen, you could write this down as 305. I'll just put it in the chat right now.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Yep.
305 224 1968. And I should have indicated that that's the phone number.
You'll need the phone number and the ID. The
And I'm going to put the ID. Right. This is a long ID.
Yeah.
All right. So 962 62 6557 3067. There you go. So there you have it. Okay.
That
All right. So
all right, we'll play a little bit more of this, and then we'll go take a call.
Okay.
All right, here she goes.
There's no room for me to give you this day your daily bread when you won't acknowledge that I'm your sole provider. From those breadcrumbs to the very breath that your lungs thrive on, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all that you need will be added unto you. That is, seek first my face before the works of my hands. That is, thirst. That is.
This is textbook victim blaming. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
That is thirst first for me before the satisfaction I bring. That is friends before benefits. That is seek me. And if anyone wishes to come after me, he needs to deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. I need you to trust.
So we can stop it there. Like, basically, all she's doing is giving you the game plan. Like, this is the first time I've had this thought, so we can kind of flesh it out live here.
Mm-hmm.
She literally is giving away the game plan of what the Christian faith calls for. It calls you to lose.
Mm-hmm.
To lose yourself, to lose your freedom, to lose your desires, to lose your, and granted, to lose them and get back something that's supposedly far more valuable, but make no mistake, it calls for you to lose. And like we said, at the beginning of this, even if the thing that you're supposed to gain is something that you can't even get in this life. So you will spend your entire life losing under the mindset of, but I'm going to gain someday. And that may be on the other side of this life. I may gain after I die, but I'm basically called to lose here. And I think there was one of the biggest parts of my deconversion was, upon deconverting, I really began to take ownership of my life and say, this is my life. I'm not going to lose it. I mean, of course, I'm going to lose it one day. We all are. But until I'm not going to lose my life before I actually lose my life. I'm going to have my life while I have life. And I had to be okay. I had to become okay with saying, the words that were put in Jesus' mouth is, those who keep their life are going to lose it. I had to be okay with that. I'm going to keep my life, and I'm fine with that. I'll take your version of losing it just so that I can have it now, as opposed to the thing that I was doing, losing it here in hopes that I'm going to have it in some kingdom, some heaven that I have no good reason to believe is ever going to pop off. That's part of deconversion, is wrestling with and being okay with that.
But it's
trading back.
I think honestly, it's also just, I think if we do anything, any public good, public facing good, is to equip people with having good, if you're counting the cost of deconversion, if these are the level of questions that you're asking, the things that she's now rebutting with her really silly rebuttal, if those are the kinds of questions you were asking, the stuff that was in the former line of questions that she was asking, then you are not ready to enter the kingdom, brother. you need to be asking maybe perhaps next week we can upload the video from TikTok of the brother who said he was an atheist and agnostic and now he's a believer.
Okay.
Because there is a certain kind. Now, granted, this is great. I mean, we've had so many conversations and we say so many things, but one of the things that we did talk about is just how different you are now than you were when you were a believer, 15 years ago, and how unlikely I am to try to predict what I'm going to be in 20 years if I'm still around. But at the same time, there's something to be said for solid grounding epistemologically, and having a grounding that enables you to make your decisions about what you believe is true about the world, the big decisions that you have about what you believe are true. There's a such thing as grounding yourself so solidly in I guess you could say the skepticism of it all, that you can pretty confidently anticipate holding on and persevering with this sort of rejection of really, really bad ideas, because if the bad ideas are not the reason why you're leaving, then you're not leaving. You're not really leaving.
So you're leaving because of bad experience instead of because of bad ideas.
But what I'm saying is you're not leaving.
Right.
Like you're not if you're not leaving bad ideas, you're not leaving. It's the bad ideas that you need to be leaving. It's not just an institution of, and I guess this is what you were talking about with Ayan Hirsi Ali, when you didn't want to give her the credit of being a true skeptic previously. And I was pushing back. But what I will say is, if you're not leaving religion because of the bad ideas, you're not leaving. You think you left. Come on here. I need give me my sound effects, man. I need my sound effects. Come on here, man. Like, let me see. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Okay, I already have them. See, this is so late. It's Johnny come lately. I can't even get.
Don't worry. I can't even get because we got a call waiting. So.
The praise goes right there.
No, but I think that's a good note to end. We got to take this call. But like you said, if you're not leaving because of the bad ideas, you're not really leaving, and that has always been my fear of somebody deconverting for anything less than theological reasons. But we have Kevlar. Let's take this call.
Okay, let's do it.
Kevlar, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
Yep. Okay.
Hey.
Your phone is mute.
Yeah.
Maybe you should take your headphones off. Oh, he says you're connecting to audio?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you now.
Yeah, man.
Hey, how's it going?
All right.
Hey, how are you doing?
Doing good. Brady, if it's that song that you're talking about earlier in the stream, dude, if it's the song I'm thinking about, that.
Oh, from Immortal Technique?
Yeah, I think I heard my friend. I think one of my best friends showed me that like 5 years ago. I'm like, bro, dude, that if it's the song I'm thinking of, that was like such an evil song. I was like, I could not bear. I was like, bro, I don't want to let these. Like, you have to. I was like,
I don't want to hear it again, but I do want to hear it again because it was so. But yeah, so Kevlar, we spoke either offline or something. Did we speak or email or something? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No, so this is my first. Yeah.
Where are you at with faith and things?
So yeah, I would say like for me, where I'm at, I was like basically like kind of fundamentalist, but I would say I was Assemblies of God. And back then I didn't really think about like denominations of churches. Like I would listen to like guys like, like Paul Washer and Joel Osteen and find ways to harmonize them in my brain, right?
Wow.
That's what I would always do. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And so I would listen to people like all over the place
Okay.
because I subconsciously was like, well, we're all Christians, and if we're all over the place, like I just was like, this is kind of an offense towards God. So I'm trying to like harmonize. I wasn't thinking of these consciously, but that's like what I was doing is I would always try to harmonize these denominations. But I would say mostly Assemblies of God in the charismatic movement area. And so that's where I was like at for a good while. And then I would say about October of like 2021, what had happened was I discovered that, or I found out that the passages of like the adulterous woman and the ending of Mark shouldn't be in the Bible based on textual criticism. And I had this theology like the Bible's the word of God kind of thing. And so when that got changed, then that made me, and like I had always like kind of heard atheist arguments on things, but I was always like, well, you guys are just giving it the worst take, the worst look. So we can look, there's another way. Like, and I always just kind of was like, there's some Christian out there that studied this for way longer than I ever could. They've got the answers. If I ever needed something like that, I'm good. So I don't need to waste my time. Right.
I was the same way. That's why I had that for many years until I went to seminary. And then one day it dawned on me. I said, wait, I'm here with those people. I can just ask them now. And that's where I went downhill.
Yeah, so you got the answers. You're like, wait, what? Yeah. So when I found that out, that made me realize I was like, okay, hold on. I need to look at this another way. And at that time I didn't, you don't even know where to start, what to look for, because I had no percentage of critical thinking ever in my ever. Like I was so gullible on things, and I was just very much listen to my tribe, ignore everyone else, right? And so, when I found out things like Mark and priority theory, that really bothered me because I was told, oh, these are independent eyewitnesses of the Gospels, right? And then I found out like Paul, there's good reasons to think Paul didn't write all of the letters that we have, or that we don't even have all of Paul's letters. That also bothered me. Then I find out like we don't even agree, like Catholics have 7 more books in their Bible than the Protestant branch of things. And it's like, so I'm wrestling with a lot of this stuff. And so where I would say I'm at right now, and again, I could go into further into that if you guys want, but I would say like kind of when you guys said at the beginning, like you're like kind of in the church building, like looking at the doors, I'd say like where I'm kind of at right now is I would say I'm still a liberal Christian, but like a liberal progressive Christian where I'm like, okay, like, I think there's probably a deity out there. But I think like, I'm just like, I got to get my life going. I got to like start, figuring out what I want to do now, because I used to do like, multiple hour worship sessions thinking like, oh, I'm working, me and God, our relationship is growing. Things are moving in the supernatural realm. And then it was very traumatic. Like I've obviously cried dozens of times in the deconstruction of like, so it just feels like that was a waste of time. Right.
Wow.
And so where I'm kind of at right now is I would say like, when I look up, I kind of still flood around or, hover around the apologetics, counter apologetics to see what comes up. And just like, I would say like, even though I tell people, hey, I'm a Christian, I'm like, when I say, maybe it's just like, I haven't accepted it yet. But when I see arguments that, and here's why there's good reasons to believe in Christianity, my mind just goes into counter apologetics mode. Like this makes the most sense to me.
Wow.
But when I'm like talking to people, if they ever ask, what do you believe? I'm like, well, I'm a Christian, but it's like purely by faith, because I don't know if I would say it's like a fear of hell, but like I think what has happened is like, you're told by Christians that if this isn't true, your life is meaningless. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
Wow.
I don't know if I'm just in this process of like trying to develop a philosophy
Yeah.
right now, and
Yeah.
or like what, because
That's
it's like, yeah, sorry if you want
no,
to
no,
say
no.
anything.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking thoughts because I have these conversations. I don't know if you follow me on Facebook, but I have incessant conversations with believers on Facebook for the last 2 years. And one of the things I often tell Christians is, you guys need to stop telling yourselves that if you didn't believe this, your life would be meaningless, because you might be painting yourself in a corner such that one day you might find yourself not believing it anymore. But you've
Yeah.
convinced yourself that life will be meaningless at that point. You need to stop saying that. And you need to give yourself other reasons to live. Because,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
the thing I always say is recast the entire conversation. I
Recast the
mean,
entire
for one,
conversation.
you're alive. Yeah, we have to recast the whole conversation because you're alive. So it's not like a person needs a reason to live in order to come to life. You're already here. So
Yeah.
when people start asking what's your reason for living, it's like it's almost a non-category for me when people ask that kind of question. Now I know what they mean. I think I know what they're trying to get at, but I'm like, we don't have to accept the kinds of questions people give us for concerning these things as being valid questions to even ask us.
Yeah.
And that's the thing for me. It's like, I don't have to present you with it. It's sufficient for me to say I enjoy my food today. Like, I don't have to say like I have some great plan, or and there's everything. It comes along with that question comes this pressure for one to, all right, I got to replace this previous edifice of a worldview with something else. And it's like, no, you don't actually have to replace that with anything. It's sufficient to say it was not true, it was useless, and okay, let's on to some other things. I don't.
Well, that gets
necessarily
into a
have to.
conversation that, and Kevin, we'll pass it back to you so you can chime back in after this. But a conversation that Jay Witt and I have had often is, I was stuck with the categories. This will illustrate everything Jay Witt just said. I was stuck with the categories of the ultimate questions. What is our origin, destiny, and meaning? I got that from Ravi Zacharias 20 years ago, right? And the Christian faith gives us our answer to the ultimate questions. And when I look around at other religions, I say, oh, they're asking the same ultimate questions and they got different answers. But it wasn't until having a talk with Jay Witt one time when he says to me, who says those are the ultimate questions? Who says I have to care about those questions? Now, granted, if you have a curious mind, you're going to want to know things like, man, what is our origin? Does something happen? You're going to have those questions. But to embrace the mindset that says, and until you get answers to them, your life is basically meaningless, or you're going to be searching, you're going to be wandering. Like, who says that you have to spend your life trying to get answers to questions that human beings have not been able to answer for the thousands upon thousands of years that we've been here? You think in the 80 years that you have life, you're going to get answers to the questions that we haven't been able to answer for thousands of years? Like, so just to kind of to rest in, this is one of the most powerful things, to be able to rest in, we don't know.
Yeah. And I think like another thing that it ultimately kind of comes down to is you got to learn to trust yourself, right? Where the church, if depending on how, and this is a cult like tendency if people aren't aware of it, and this is like something that, if when I like, if I talk to people about this, I think it's ultimately important to always let them decide and trust themselves where they go with this, because when they use the scripture like, oh, lean not on your own understanding but on God's, right, they don't understand that sometimes, and I think it's important to ultimately understand that there needs to be recognition that people aren't consciously aware that they're behaving like a cult, where they say, don't trust yourself, trust God, right? And it's like, I've had that ingrained in me so long, and it's like, I think like you just have to get to a point where you have to like trust yourself in that.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still just like walking through that process.
Yeah.
and just being like, okay, I think like ultimately I have to tell myself wherever I end on this, it's gonna be okay. Cause I think that's just what you have to do, right?
Yeah. And
And
remember, when you're trusting yourself, when you're trusting God, you're still trusting yourself because you're trusting the God that you've kind of formulated in your head.
Right. You're
that's a good
you're
point.
trusting the way that you understand God.
Mhm.
So like
Yeah.
you're not going to be
Yeah.
able to escape trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Think
Absolutely.
about as many different Christians as there are that believe different things. Each of them is trusting themselves, even though they, like Jay was said, they say they're trusting God, but they're trusting the way that they understand it. And they're trusting that what they understand makes more sense than what that person understands. You're really
Mhm.
like, I said this on Facebook the other day. It's the most insane thing to me now to think that a God would leave us at the mercy of writings.
I know. I
Like,
know. Like we as humans, we sorry to cut you off, just
no,
we
go
as
ahead.
humans, we communicate best through body language. I think it's like the
Mm,
psychologist said 70% of our communications through body
mm.
language, and then like a certain percentage is tone, and then letters, words.
Right.
It's like what? Like
Right.
Mhm.
that's it? Like this
We're
is
left
what
at the
God's doing.
mercy of the worst form of communication. It's already bad enough if it's just you and me texting each other. How many
Yeah.
times? How many times do you have to tell somebody you read my text wrong? I didn't mean it like that. I
All
wasn't.
the time.
So
Yeah.
so look,
Well,
we're in the same time zone.
I
it's
know.
so
Yeah.
it's so
Right.
bad that I'm regularly making the joke with people that on paper I said such and such, and it's a joke when I say it. I'm like the person. I'll say, "Hey, I don't want to. Yeah, I want to go there," but I'll say it in a tone that actually means I don't want to go. And then the person will be like, "Okay, well, we don't." And I say, on paper, I said that I wanted to go, and the joke is, you can say something with words like you said, that doesn't communicate what you actually mean because tone, like you say, and other
Right.
things have such a great import. It's even the incidentalness of when he decides to give revelation. Why not give revelation in a time when we
Oh,
had hard drives or
that's
something?
like
Like
yeah, that's like my biggest pet peeve is
Mm,
like when I look at like the book of Acts, coming from the charismatic side of
mm,
things, I'm just like, because like I was like when I was deconstructing, I was thinking like, was I off? Was I missing something? Was I
mm,
really just way over my head? Like, were these faith
Mhm.
healings? Were these prophecies? Were these just not scriptural kind of thing? Was this just the liberal side of Christianity? And then when I looked at the book of Acts and looking at it through like all different angles of like scholarship, I was like, no, this is like fair game. This should still be
yeah.
happening. This took place post
Mm,
resurrection of Jesus. Why don't I have an angel coming down to me like Philip saying, go tell that person about
mm,
Jesus, and then I'll baptize you. When you baptize him, I'll grab you out of there before he sees you. Like, why don't I
Mhm.
see Jesus coming down, like my atheist friends coming to me, hey Kevin, when you told me about Jesus, guess what, Jesus showed up to me, right? Or
Well, is
like,
it
Yeah.
any kind of comfort to your faith to read things like, because I believe these things were actually put there to answer what you just said. But there are things in the Bible where you'll find Jesus or others saying things like, okay, you believe because you see, but blessed are they who have not seen and still believe. Maybe your reward, Kevlar, is you're not going to have the Acts experience, but you still believe, and therefore you're going to be more blessed than
it
those people.
no, it never, those never encouraged me because I was
Okay.
very much black and white thinking where
Mm.
if you're in heaven, like that's good enough. If you don't get to the kingdom of God, everything was a waste. That's
Mm.
Mm,
how
mm,
that's how I
mm,
just
mm.
like thought of it, right?
Mm.
And so, and then even thinking about that, it's like, okay, if I take the fundamentalist Christian right,
Mm.
140,000 people die every day, and then what, you do the math and it's like 70, 80, 90,000, depending on how liberal or
Mm.
extremely conservative you are. That many people aren't entering the kingdom of God. And it's
Mm.
like, yeah, so I
Mm.
mean, I could go on and on about
Yeah.
this, but like, I want to ask your guys' takes on this. Like, so where I'm at right now,
Mm.
I would love to believe in like the faith healings, the prophecies, the speaking in tongues is always weird to me, but
Mm.
sure, why not, right? But I'm just like, I can't really, like, I tell Christians, everyone like that openly, like, I would love for that stuff to be true, but it's never happened for me. I've never seen any credible evidence for it. I'm not a
Mm.
cessationist in the
Mm.
sense that I'm like, I'm a, like, I believe that the gifts should be continuing. and the fact that they're not is a problem for Christianity. I tell Christians, like, I would love for these gifts to continue. I'd love to, and like I tell them, I'd love to have a relationship with God, but he never speaks to me. This is what I like openly advertise, I guess, right? And then when I'm like, if I'm seeing like, usually when I see apologists or counter apologist videos, hearing people's takes, I'm usually siding very much strongly with the counter apologist side. That makes a lot more sense. And so I'm finding myself in this situation where, you know, like, and I'll do Bible study with some of my real life Christian friends, but I'm not really telling them, hey, like, this is where I'm at kind of thing. So where I think I'm at is I'm kind of just not ready to make the big step that, hey guys, this is what's happening. I'm just kind of like learning about finances right now, learning about investments, trying to take care of my life, because I'm like, okay, whether God's there or not, he's not actually interested. Yeah, he's not interested in taking care of my daily bread like I thought he was. Right? So I'm just like, what are your guys' thoughts? Like, I'm just like, my kind of plan right now is let's set it to the side and take care of real life stuff, take care of like, figure out what I want to do first. And I'm just not, I just don't think I'm in a mentally comfortable place right now to say everyone, like, to just force that lever. Because I think if I were to force it, that's probably where it comes to, because like, if you, the way you say it, Brady, you, like, you put this equation and you put that equation and you hit the equal sign, right? I'm like, okay, when I hit the equal sign, I'm like, the only way you get there is by faith. Like, it's nothing like, oh, of course, like, you look at this evidence and it's going to lead you to believe. No, it's like, you have to jump ahead with faith. And until I have that God encounter, or I'm convinced that's what it is, I'm just like, it's only faith, or like maybe a more accurate sense, blind faith, right? So that's, what are your guys' thoughts on that, I guess?
I'll go real quick then, because Jay Witt, I think he's been out of the faith for 10 years. I've only been out for somewhere, my thing is somewhere between 3 and 5 years. I gotta figure out when I actually was fully out. But I think one thing, yes, you've got to do what you've got to do for you. I think it's extremely brave for you to even jump on here and have this live conversation. Because it's, you know, there are people who are going to see this as, oh, you know, oh, we got to pray for him, or they may even stiff arm you because they think they see the way that you're going. So I think it's brave of you. Thank you for even coming on and sharing where you are. I would say, we talked about this. Did we release this podcast yet? I don't know if we put this one out yet, but I would say, I think you have to put God to the test. You have to put your faith to the test.
Yeah.
And when I left seminary, I told God, I'm not going to help anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to squint my eyes to make the miracle, or make the coincidence look like a miracle. And I still did it for a couple of years. I still was like, you know, trying to connect the dots. Maybe that's God, or maybe when that happened, that was God.
Yeah, yeah.
After a couple of years of that, I just said, let me stop doing that, and let me, for lack of a better term, let me force God to be God without me trying to make it work for him. Let me take off the training wheels. Let me get rid of the booster seat. Let me let big God be big God without little old Brady helping him out. And when I stopped making excuses for God, when I stopped trying to connect the dots for God, heaven got silent.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, wait, so you mean all that time it was me?
Oh, yeah.
Because the only way it could just stop, when I stop, it's almost like Beetlejuice, right? When you stop believing, he's gone.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen if God is real. If God is real, I should be able to stop and he keep going. But no. So I encourage you, yes, live your life. Find out what you got to do to survive, to, you know, be independent as much as you can be and all that. And just see if heaven does anything without you helping.
Yeah.
See where that lands you.
Okay.
The only thing I would say to it, what you're saying is, because this is not real, because because this religion is just another myth among the many myths that have been on this planet. There's no real priority to figuring it out. So there's a sense in which what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, you got to figure out, unless you believe the text, God's going to get his, right? Like if you don't give it to him, he's going to make sure that he gets it from you in the hospital or something, right? But no, all jokes aside, because it's not real, I don't believe it's real, obviously. I don't think it's any rush to figure any of this stuff out. And I think you should take as long as you need to figure it out so that, like, as I was saying before we took this call, if you don't leave because of actually rejecting bad ideas, you haven't actually left. So however long it takes you to come to grips with the bad ideas. Now, if that requires you reading through the whole text and understanding what the text is actually presenting and listening to the best arguments, for believing. That's what I did. I listened to what I found to be the best arguments for and against it. And I took and nobody was pressuring me to hurry up and figure it out. So I figure it's not like Jesus is going to come back or something before you figure this out, because Jesus is not coming back. So just take your time and work through everything and make sure that you encounter. The main thing I would say is try to confront the best ideas for staying in the faith. And the best arguments for staying in the faith. And if you can stare them in the face and it's just like, yo, these still, he was in many Teco Parson or whatever, and Daniel, you found if you do all that and you still weigh it and find it wanting, then all right, just chuck up the deuces and bounce, But it might take you another 10 years to do that. Who knows? And it's no rush. This is your life, man.
Well, you know what? I hear you, and I'm with you on that. But at the same time, because this is your life, and as far as we know, this is the only life you get. I wouldn't, 10 years is a long time. I came out of
I'm not saying 10 years. I'm not saying 10 years of I'm saying if he's putting it on pause and he's like, hey, I'll handle it. That's what I mean. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying.
Well, let me let me just try to reiterate, because I don't know, just to kind of, I think I've searched the whole barrel, and the only thing
that's all you got left is faith.
It's just I want this to be true.
But
if someone held my feet to the fire and said, Kevin, does the evidence of the resurrection of what we have of Christianity lead one to faith? I'd say no, not to me. The only reason why I would say I'm holding on right now is just because I was born into it. I have a culture of it. My friends are like this, and I'm just that's where I would say I'm at, right? So I don't think there's, I mean, I'm always open to hearing if there's other intellectual arguments, if the apologists say, we got this new argument and it's not clickbait, I'm open to listening to it. But I'm
so dude, it seems like you've done the intellectual work already. Now it's the emotional and social work that needs to be done.
That's what I think it is, right?
Brother, what would Jesus say? He would say, you're not far from the kingdom. Sell all that you have and give it to the poor. And then you will walk away with your head down.
Well, and the thing is I used to be the type of believer that I would give 20%. I don't regret this, because it's I remember I think it was Francis Chan in his book. He would talk about a guy he's given tithing 20%, and then when he got downgraded from his job or whatever, he was going up to 30%, and I was like, yeah, that's me. And then I'm like, dude, now as I look back on that, I'm I mean, I'm not hard on myself. I'm I did the best I could with the knowledge I have. You have to forgive yourself. You have to move forward. Be gracious to yourself. Absolutely. But I'm bro, I'm just I think it's 100% just the emotional aspect of it, where I'm
and that may say something about your personality too. I was a type that the intellectual mattered most to me. Once that was gone, I stuck around a little bit longer, but I was very methodically detaching myself from my Christian community so that they didn't depend on me for church stuff. They didn't depend on me for, I was very methodically carving my way out because intellectually I couldn't get there anymore. That mattered
Yeah.
most to me. And at some point, I think what may happen is, if it's not already beginning to happen, you're going to want to live as authentically as possible. And
Yeah.
the parts of you where you just say, this is not me anymore, I don't believe this, you're going to have a hard time acting it out.
That's exactly, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I think is like slowly happening. And I almost just kind of feel like letting that burn wherever. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think it's like that. I think that's just becoming a slow burn, and I'm almost just like letting that burn wherever it burns. If it makes me, maybe I'll stay a progressive Christian, or maybe I'll go to agnostic. I don't know if I could.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like agnostic atheist or whatever. Just wherever that burns, let it burn. Because, yeah, like I just think that's just like once the time comes, like letting that. Yeah. So
I think Christians could help. If there's any Christians watching, like, let's live in light of whatever the reality is, and whatever we can get to, say, yeah, this is the reality. Let's live in light of that. And if the God of the Bible is not part of that reality, we just need to be okay with that. We need to get ourselves to be okay with that. We need to allow other people to be okay with that. As it pertains to a creator or a deity or God at all, if a God is part of the reality, I would say, isn't it God's job to reveal himself, itself, to explain itself, to defend itself, and until a God does that, I'm not like, well, fuck God then. I'm not like on some but I'm trying to, like, until a God has presented itself as part of the reality that I have to respond to, it's a waste of time and energy for me to try to respond to I know not what.
Yeah.
So, what do you do with that?
Yeah. And like, I think another point to maybe just to again express where I'm coming from. I don't know if you guys related to this, because like for me, it's always funny. I remember when I was like 100% a Christian and like I'm in it, like, and it was crazy. I had like no doubt for the longest time. I was like, I knew, but I remember when atheists would kind of make fun of the religion or whatever. I remember I would always be like kind of embarrassed, like humiliated, like, oh, they're kind of right here. And now it's so funny. When I hear theists try to make fun of atheists or agnostics, I'm like, that doesn't, like, okay, like you're not, that's not budging me.
So what you're saying, Kev, what you're saying is, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing
is, go ahead.
You're on the other team already. It seems like you're on the other team.
I think that's, you could probably say that. And I just am saying, but I'm labeling myself a progressive Christian.
You're still wearing the jersey,
the hat,
the other team, yeah. Because you don't celebrate when the Christian team scores. When the non-theists score, you're like, yeah, we scored another point. Like,
I'm just like, like when I hear like miracles, like don't get me wrong, when I hear people proclaim miracle stories, I'm always like, I'm happy for you that you think this is God, but I'm like, I don't think this is enough to warrant belief. I'm happy for people on an emotional level like that, but I'm like, I don't think you're sourcing it correctly.
That's so human of you, yo. Like to rejoice with those who rejoice. That's so human of you to see somebody else have an experience that you don't agree with the source or the explanation, but that something positive is happening for another human and you get excited about. Like,
he's why we did that whole evolutionary steps of deconversion video.
Yeah.
Because that people have this idea, that's the everything. They have this idea that you're in or you're out. And in actuality, it's very much like speciation. It's not that you're in or out, but that you gradually become out, usually. I mean, eventually there is
for me,
And then when you look back on it, you can see like the pro-generation of it. You could see what was maybe the thing that sparked it, but then you realize you can actually count. You don't realize when it's happening that it's happening. And then when the other side, you look back on it in retrospect, just like looking back on history.
Yeah.
And you actually can you can now name. I was like, okay, that's what was happening there. I was already beginning to not believe, and so
No,
you're somewhere
yeah.
along the lines. I mean, you're very close. I mean, you're close to the kingdom in some ways. It is the kingdom. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just, like I said, yeah, I think that's like, you could probably just say that's what I am, but I'm still
Mm,
gonna say, yeah, I'm a liberal progressive Christian. That's where I'm
yeah.
at, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Can I
We talked
ask you,
about that.
Kev? Can I ask you who
yeah.
are some of the lights of the liberal progressive brand that you subscribe to? Who are some of the lights on that side of things?
Uh Gosh, I would say like I like I think it's Zach Lambert's the guy's name. I'd have to double check
Hmm.
who he is.
Okay.
Do you know the new evangelical guy? Do you know him?
No. No.
These are like really new people.
Okay.
They're like they're basically, I think they came out of Assemblies of God as well, and they're
Hmm.
basically saying like, yeah, we're liberal progressive Christians kind of thing.
Hmm.
They say like, yeah, the Bible did obviously endorse slavery. We're
Hmm.
completely against that. We're against the Bible when it says like, oh,
Hmm.
homosexuality is bad. We're
Hmm.
changing, we're updating like stuff on that is
Right.
what it
But
is.
they
And so
still
I'm like,
believe in the resurrection. They still
yeah,
believe in.
yeah, they
Okay.
believe in the Trinity. They
Right.
believe, yeah, they think
Okay.
that stuff's, yeah, they're on board with that stuff. But they're just like, yeah, we'll change those things kind of thing.
Yeah. So
And
one part of your process is going to be you're going to have to find new people. You're going to have to find your people that align with your beliefs and your values, uh, because very few people want to come out of Christianity and not be going into a new community.
mhm.
And part of what has you there is, like you said, you grew up in it, but you still have community there. Those are the people that you feel like. I'm just going to be honest. I may catch flack for this, but I remember when I became a non-Christian, I was afraid of the online atheist community because I just thought atheists are just
Scumbags.
right. I was going to say
Yeah.
godless, but of course they're godless. But I meant godless in the worst way.
Oh yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? I had to look, and I had to think about, like, man, I can't demonize people with my old lenses in this new way of living. So
Yeah.
I think part of the process for you too will be figuring out, who do I agree with? There's something about being able to agree with people that just makes you feel even more a part of just the human experience.
Yeah, I think that's like
Mm-hmm.
another thing as I think about it, is that's going to be the challenge for people who are whatever type of change they make, whether it's from theism to atheism, atheism to theism, or in between. Yeah, like I have the challenge now of trying to find a community that
Mm,
I, you know, am able to resonate with in some
yeah.
level too. And like even the same with like, trying to find like, I want to find people that are holding me accountable even to like work and discipline now, and not, not just I used to
Yeah.
have people like holding me accountable to like faith and stuff like that. And
Mm,
but now it's like, yeah, I've got to like revamp all of that. And that's the
yeah.
challenge now that I think maybe many other people will have to face, is that, and I think maybe we're all in agreement on this, is just that, wherever anyone is out there, like,
Yeah.
please find a community, right?
Yeah.
Like we need it out there. So, I mean, I can keep going. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Kay just put in the chat, and people always talk about this here. Recovering from Religion is a organization that definitely helps people understand the deconversion slash deconstruction process from a clinical psychological perspective. Definitely a good place to check out. Um, I
Yeah,
keep
for
saying
sure.
this. I need to do this myself, having deconverted. I've been using Facebook as my therapy. But that's why you see me on this so often. Like, I got to work through a lot of this stuff. And so
Yeah.
I'll throw a thought out there, and just part of what's been helping me is to throw a thought out there and to see how Christians respond to the thought. And their responses just make me say, damn, I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
Yeah.
That's been therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
But
I,
yeah.
I no, and there's definitely been positives of that. Like, I'm not worried about hell anymore. I'm not
Mm,
worried about like, what if I'm not doing enough? What if I'm not
mm,
doing enough right? Like
mm,
always constantly,
yeah.
I don't know what type of churches you went to, but I was always of the self-shaming, we're lousy Christians, we're horrible, let's
Mm,
cry about it kind of thing. And then we just think maybe that crying is God's doing something in the realm or whatever. And it's just like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm down to keep chatting. That's really all I wanted to say. If you guys want to ask me other questions, you can. But
yeah, I think we're gonna let it go there. But we definitely appreciate your call, and we cheer you on. I didn't have
thank
anybody.
you.
I didn't have anybody cheering me on. Jay Witt went through it on his own. I
Yeah.
went through it
Oh
on my
gosh.
own, and it was very, very dark. But
Mm-hmm.
we cheer you on in becoming, I say, in becoming fully human. And becoming fully human is recognizing what powers do you have at your disposal and what don't you have. And
Absolutely.
if I don't have a God to rely on, I need to know that so that I can do what I need to do for me.
Yeah, and just one last thing, as I just realized before I'll let you guys go, is I remember when I started to like, oh, it could be like not true. Like it was so traumatic for me. I mean, I was crying about it. Like, you mean to tell me that the creator of the universe doesn't have my back? Like, isn't loving with me? Isn't there with me? This world is so hard. It's so difficult. Like, I need a God like this. And I'm just now walking out of the stages of, I can do this. I can figure this out. I have to do this. It's okay. Like, okay, there is no God. Now that means it's not up to God. It's up to me. Like, trying to find ways to figure this out, trying to find ways to make this work, trying to like instill, like, reposition some of my philosophy or edit it, if you will. So, anyways.
Hey, great stuff, man. Thanks for calling. And definitely find a way to stay in touch. Like I said, if you don't follow me on Facebook, I'm on there almost every day, throwing up thoughts, having conversations. There are deconverted folks in my on my threads, helping to encourage others and get others to think. Would love to continue to chat with you, man.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Take care, guys.
All right. Yep.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
It's all right now.
Hey, we had to do it.
Yeah.
It's, you're gonna be okay, man. It's all right.
Yeah. And many others, like so many other people have deconverted, and it's not the great falling away that you read about in the Bible. It's the great waking up. It's people realizing this is nonsense, and I'm not gonna live my life for nonsense. I don't have to do that. Now, granted, if your relationships and your employment, and to be honest, your identity and all that is tied into your Christian faith, it may feel like you have to keep doing this, but to whatever degree you can live in light of the reality that the Bible is not a word of God. The Bible is.
I think Kev, what he proves is that this is what happened when I deconverted, and this is very short, but it's just basically a lot of believers will look at you, and I'll never forget Vocab and them were like, "Oh, you left because of science." They always reduce it. I mean, anybody who listens to Kevlar should have seen that this is a complex matrix of this. This is not. It's not a single issue thing. It's the way one thing relates to the other. It's a very complex. It's not simplistic. Like people, there are problems in the real world that are like that. Or you say, oh, how do we deal with the prison industrial complex? Well, now you have individual investors, et cetera. It becomes, it's not just, oh, let's just get rid of the prison. It's not that simple, because of the complexity of all of the moving parts. Well, you can see in his deconversion, this is why often a person doesn't realize until they're already out that they've been out or something, because it's just so many moving parts. It's just like, before you know it, you realize, oh, I wasn't praying or I wasn't reading anymore. And this issue was the thing that bothered me, but then this issue bothered me too. This issue bothered me more than this issue.
And
this
then
issue
I realized I realized I wasn't trusting God anymore, that I was trusting myself. And having started trusting myself, I realized that nothing bad happened when I started trusting myself. Matter of fact, I realized I was actually doing better when I was trusting. Like, all of these little things add up to. So we talked about this a couple of days ago, Jay Witt. People are asking me, will I debate so-and-so? Will I debate this Christian and that Christian? one of the reasons why I won't debate people is because they want to stick to just one issue. And like Jay Witt just said, it's not one issue. It's not, oh, let's deal with early Genesis. Oh, let's deal with the resurrection. Oh, let's deal with the prophecies. Oh, let's deal with, it's
it's a
all
waste of time.
interconnected. And so if I just deal with one issue, you might be able to answer that by doing things that mess up other parts of, the Bible. If I can't bring the whole thing in, I can't actually demonstrate why this whole thing is nonsense, because all you're doing is you're playing whack-a-mole with this issue versus that issue versus that issue.
Yeah, it's like the Rubik's Cube requires all of the all of those colors have to be lined up. It's not like I can have one that's kind of out of place. And it's like, yeah, you can't. Yeah, you're right. It's like, if you're a Christian, it's not going to be enough to just deal with Genesis 1 and 2 or Genesis 2 and 3 or something. You got to deal with how that relates to Romans 5 or something,
Exactly.
then and then how that relates to what Jesus says about the situation. So it's like, and that's why it's never one. I think that's when people really try to reduce it. Obviously, there's a certain place that intuition play a certain role that intuition plays in this whole thing. When you just, how like they talk about that sixth sense where somebody's behind you even though you're not seeing. There's a certain kind of intuition that sometimes hits you too, where you're just like, I'm getting the striking sense that this is a human institution, and you might not be able to put your finger on why that's the case. Yeah,
but
it's just like a sixth sense almost. Like you just like, what is going on here? And then you start having other things as you start looking, and you're like, well, that's a little fishy there. Then you start looking at inerrancy, or you start looking at infallibility. You start looking at the text, the autographer, and all the issues. I never forget when I was a believer, and I was a believer for years after it. I remember looking into the issue of inerrancy. And when I actually started understanding what inerrancy meant, then I realized, oh, they were referring to the autographer. But then, they're quick after you read enough, they're quick to let you know we don't have access to the autographer. We only have access to it via the copies that have made it down to us. I remember when that happened because I was ignorant for a long time up until that point. And then when I looked into the issue, I realized, oh, so when we're talking about this infallible or an inerrant word, it's
we're talking
not
about something that we don't even have access to.
Or the way the believers would say, we have access to it through the copies that have made it down. But they're, it's such a dubious thing that they have to have footnotes and footnotes on footnotes. And you're just like, of course, I closed that door and I never returned to it just because it was scary. Is this resonating with you, Brady, a little?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I said this, I had a whole discussion on Facebook where I put up one post that got a lot of comments, but there was one comment that made me have to rethink it. The first post said, what does it say? I said, deconstruction is easy. Just turn the same critical lens you use against other religions against your own. And a lot of people were like, yeah, that's true. If I looked at my faith the way I look at others, I'll be able to deconstruct it. And someone said, no, deconstruction is actually hard. It's not easy, Brady. You need to rethink that. So I came back the next day and I reworded it. I said, if you deconvert first, then deconstruction is easy. Because if you deconvert first, now you're no longer interested in trying to preserve parts of your faith. But if you deconstruct first, and you're not sure whether you're going to deconvert yet, then you're going to spend all this time trying to negotiate between your conscience and your Christian community and your Christian identity to try to figure out what can you keep, what can you. So it's the deconverted person can look back at their Christian life and say, damn, I should have saw that issue, this issue, that all of that should have led me here. But it took me so long because I was slowly deconstructing over 5 years. That's why it took so long.
Yeah, the obvious imprint of human hands on it is just unavoidable once you're out. It's like it's such an obvious it just becomes one among the many world religions once you leave. You just, it just literally is just another myth or something. And there's nothing that makes it at all remarkable. But, getting there, like I say, you're following intuition. Like I say, on some level, you see the intuition. And, you could even see the way Christians behave, and you start realizing, well, this doesn't really seem like there's a supernatural element at work at all here.
I've said this several times. I said one of the things that the I call him Bible God, and it's sort of a derogative name because I see the Bible as it's not a favorable thing to be the God of the Bible. But one of the reasons that I think Bible God robbed itself of my faith is you could have done anything to make this more believable than it is. You could have really transformed, like you could have given Christians sanctification on earth, not the process of sanctification, which could easily be confused with, oh, that person's just being socially conditioned to not drink anymore, or to not smoke, or to not curse, or like to really transform and give a person a sinless life. Like what? This is the true God, because look at this. Don't leave us here with these, but they say there's a message in the mess. Like, don't leave us here with these messes. Like these messes are the testimony of God's handiwork. Like, I know the sin that I still crept and did while I was a believer. Like, I was God's handiwork. The stuff that I struggled with, I was God's.
Was it in Ephesians, created in Christ to do works that God prepared before? But it's interesting because we were talking to Kevlar about even the timing of giving revelation. It's like, think about it. If a day is 1,000 years, it's not like he was in a rush. It's like we live in the era of the internet, man. Like, this is an era where people have to delete old tweets lest they get canceled. So just think about it. He could have given his word in such a way where it was the era of the internet. You know how, like they say, once you put it on the internet, it's forever. Right. It's like, it would have been like God's word would have been established on the internet forever. Like, there would have been like, it wasn't like it was a rush. It's like they say, at the appointed time. Well, why couldn't the appointed time be a time when we could preserve the actual words like the internet does? No, you gave it to us at a time when it's on parchment and you got people making copyist errors and all kind of. It's just ridiculous. No part of that makes any sense. If you know where history is going, and you know we're going to be an interconnected globe, and that you could delete it off of my hard drive, but you can't delete it off of everybody on the internet's hard drive. Like, you could have just given your word in a time when that's the case, and there would be so many copies of it out on the internet that it would be impossible for us to have any doubt about what your word actually says. But no, you give it to us, to a couple of people out in the desert, and people got to dig up scrolls in the desert. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that's going on.
Hey, well, we're going to go ahead, and I don't see anything, any super chats or anything like that. I did see Albert Kim.
We forgot to ask.
What's up, Al?
You can't beat. Hold on, let me put that music on. You can't beat God given. Come on, somebody. Come on. Let's get those super chats. Come on. You can't beat. Come on.
Just in case anybody's like, "Hey, you guys didn't read my comment or question." We typically are going to be looking for super chats. Super chats is, you give a little something, $1, $2, $5, something like that. That'll make your chat stand out. Other than that, it's too many just to go back through and read to kind of find out who said what, when, where, and why. So that being the case, we're gonna go ahead and call it. Thank you again, Kev, for calling in. Thank you guys for rocking with us. Like, subscribe. If you haven't commented, drop a comment. Much love to you guys. May skepticism and humanism find you, guide you, so that we can make this life as good as it can be for everybody involved here. All right, that's gonna do it for us. We out on that note.
All right. See you, man.
I gotta come up with an altar call to go to that music. Yeah.